All right, so
I have to give you a little bit of credit for this.
Yeah, we can overdub it later. Just
I
haven't had any crazy stories about. Oh wait, no, I do. I got robbed at gunpoint, mugged.
Checking for me, but I ain't checking for them. No.
it's sleazy real estate, guys.
but you.
All right, so another episode of the EP podcast here. I have my lovely friend who I haven't seen in a long time. He's been away for a little while now in Mexico. Issa J.
Correct.
How you doing, brother? All
Life's
is well?
good. Definitely, brother. Life is good. How are you?
I'm great. Well, thank you so much for doing this for us. You know, we spoke about a month ago.
Yes.
I was like, hey, we should definitely do the podcast together. I just, based on what I've seen and known about you, I thought that you were interesting. I was like, you know what? Why don't we do this with the podcast? You know, so let's uncover a bunch of topics. Let's get to know you a little bit. We have a few topics here. We're going to talk about how we met. We're going to talk about your time in Delaware, your education background here, religion, travel, dating, a little bit of everything, right? So how does that sound for you? All right.
I'm excited.
There you go. Okay, that's awesome. Real quick before we do, guys, if you haven't already, please comment, like, give us a thumbs up, subscribe, share it with your friends. We enjoy doing this for you, so if you want to see more of it, please do. But yeah,
absolutely.
Back to it. There you go.
Only takes a second.
Turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our uploads. So, all right, my brother.
Yes.
Let's see. Honestly, I have a little bit of a blur of the timeline of where we met. Because I remember we were in a social setting. I saw you. You were having a blast. You were enjoying yourself. I was like, I want to talk to this guy. Right. So do you remember the timeline of that? When was that? 2022? Like, was it before then?
Yeah,
Did you say that?
possibly.
You say that? Yeah. And I met you through my friend Mylan, which is you're probably like the third or fourth guest I say this now. It's like Mylan is a glue to pretty much everything.
Yes.
So yeah, I met you there. We were all dancing it up, just having a good time, getting some food at a place that's called Freddy's over in Newark.
Yes.
So they always serve like, what's that one thing that we always get every time we go? Is it the fries with cheese on it?
Yeah.
The melted fries and cheese. So I met you there, and I was like, I really like this guy. Let me talk to him. And you were just telling me about yourself a little bit. You told me how you spoke Spanish a little bit and all that stuff like that. And then next thing I know, you're in Mexico. So let's uncover all of that. So let's start with Delaware. Were you born and raised in Delaware? Are you from here? Tell us a little bit about that.
All right. Well, 302 represent. I lived here about 21 years of my life. Born in Virginia. Moved to Pennsylvania, and then ever since I was 5 years old, I was in Delaware.
So Virginia, Pennsylvania, Delaware. If you don't mind me asking, from Virginia to Pennsylvania, what cost to move?
My dad's job.
Okay. That's actually the same reason why we ended up here. So from Virginia to Pennsylvania for your dad's job, and then you ended up in Delaware. Was it for the same reason?
Correct. Yeah.
For your dad's job. Okay, that's perfect. And so you're from 5 years old to now you're 26.
Yeah.
You've been in Delaware, and you essentially grew up here. Where did you go for middle school, high school, all that stuff?
I proudly went to Gunner Bedford Middle School. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Home of the professional and NBA athletes and more.
Okay.
Yes, definitely. I also was fortunate enough to go to St. George's High, so that was fun too.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And you went to University of Delaware as well, right?
Yes.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about your time at University of Delaware.
It was really great and eye-opening. Bittersweet, but I have a lot of good experiences there. And
What did you study over there?
Sport management.
Sports management. Okay, so why sports management?
It felt right. That's really the main reason after switching majors. And then after going from
I see that you always play basketball. Is it that you just been a big sports guy since you were little, or did something inspire that, or what was it?
That's honestly a very huge factor too. So that's the main factor, honestly.
Sports management. Okay, and then you graduated in 2019. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, 2019, and you were sports management at University of Delaware. Did you play in any clubs or anything like that at all?
Not at that level, no.
Okay.
I ended up doing intramural a lot.
Okay, that's
But, yeah.
awesome. That's awesome. I've heard a lot about those. I know about the intramural like soccer teams at the University of Delaware. I always used to go watch a little bit of them. So you did a lot of intramural sports at University of Delaware. You were there for 4 years. 4 years, 5 years? How long?
Correct,
were you?
4.
4 years. And what was your biggest takeaway there?
Being able to meet new people as many times as I could, and it just expanded my network just naturally. And I liked how I just naturally like to meet new people, which relates to traveling too. And with that being said, it just felt right, and then I could see how things connect in various ways.
Okay, that's awesome. That's awesome. And then right after that, you went to, is it Women's University?
Correct, yep.
Women's University. What did you do over there?
I did human services, no, administration of human services.
Okay, so you went from sports management to administration of human services. How does that change happen?
Honestly, I realized when I was in, well, not Wilmington, when I was in University of Delaware, I was involved within a lot of activities that involved community service, really. And a lot of those people that were with me were also involved in social services or social work or stuff that's similar. And I realized I'm a nonprofit type of guy. I was able to start my own registered student organization.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, thank you. And it helped out with nonprofits. So I realized that relevant field and industry, and the word I'm looking for is the general environment, the atmosphere was more meant for me.
Okay.
So that's why I realized with my purposes in life too, that it felt like it was more meant for me.
Okay, that's awesome. Wow. Yeah, because that's definitely almost like a night and day difference.
Yes.
You know? So, but even then, you got your bachelor's, but then you decided to go for your master's.
Right.
Like a good amount of people typically, you know, so they say, oh, I got my 4 years, I'm good, I'm out of here, I'm going into, you know, whatever kind of time work it is. But what got you to said, you know what, I want to do this for a little longer, and I'm going for the master's?
Excellent question. So the surprising thing is basketball. So what had happened was I tried out for the Wilmington U basketball team, D2 basketball, which is very hard. And
I didn't know there were D2. That's awesome.
yeah, it's crazy how things work, but it's pretty sick. So pretty much I'm glad that I failed, but like it depends on how you look at the word failure. So I didn't make the team, and honestly I could have made the team, but you had to be in very good physical shape. So that was the number one reason I didn't make it. But I will say, fast forward a few years now, I didn't make that team, but when I was in Mexico and other countries, I really put my foot in the door. And even certain parts of Europe, I really put my foot in the door. So I have no regrets. And if I get double citizenship soon, I have it much easier to play professional basketball. So
that's awesome. That's awesome.
Thank you.
So you mentioned briefly just now, you said, depending on your definition of failure.
Yeah.
Can you unpack that a little bit? What's your definition of failure?
All right.
Or at least how you turned it into whatever you turned it after that happening.
Perfect. So I'd say, in my case, I enjoy failure because my definition of failure is when I do something and I don't achieve the goal that I want. But the reason it's a positive thing for me is because when I fail, I know that it's always a lesson learned. It's beneficial, and it just brings you closer to your goal at the end of the day. So that's why I just look at it as positive.
That's awesome, man. It's always a perspective of how you look at things, right?
100.
That's awesome. So how different was University of Delaware from Wilmington University? What were the differences like there for you? Or was it the exact same thing?
I will take the words of EP, my wise friend. Night and day. I had to, man. I had to. Absolutely.
Tell us about that.
Yes. So I realized, one, I was in Wilmington University as a grad student, and two, mostly during the pandemic, 2019 to 2022. So with that being said, it was very hard to meet new people, and that campus in itself did not really have involvement in terms of Wilmington University. But in the University of Delaware, meeting new people was just a norm, and just similar things to that. So it was day and night because of the fact that you can't really meet any new people in Wilmington University.
Oh, wow. Okay. So you met a lot more people at University of Delaware than you did at Wilmington.
Absolutely.
Okay. So did that allow you more time to focus on your studies and all that stuff?
Yes, with that, and it allowed me to focus more on working as well, so generate income while doing studies.
What were you working at the time?
In Wilmington University, I remember I was working at the YMCA actually.
Okay. And that's where you typically play basketball, no?
Surprisingly not.
Okay.
It depended on the year of my life, but
Okay. I see.
yeah.
So how did you end up working at the YMCA? Which one?
the one on the Western YMCA on Kirkwood Highway.
On Kirkwood Highway. I used to go to that one, actually.
Small world.
Long time ago. Yeah, I used to live closer to that area. And then after that, I ended up going to the Retro Fitness that actually closed. I don't know if you know the Retro Fitness that was down the street.
I do remember it.
Yeah, I don't know if you know, but that's like closed now.
Yeah, I was surprised when that happened.
Yeah. So how did you end up working there?
Basically, I was looking at jobs in Indeed, and then I found a fitness instructor, pretty much a job that related to that, and it was like in a kids zone area. So I tried it out, and it was pretty cool. And then they also asked me to do like childcare, and I was like, I have nothing to lose, why not? So yeah, and then next thing you know, I ended up working with children for 2.5 years, and it wasn't even by. It just came by like them asking for me, really. So yeah, and I learned a lot from that.
Nothing to lose and everything to gain, right? I love that. I love that.
Yes, indeed.
Okay, so it's very interesting timing right now. Right now you're doing Ramadan. Is that correct?
You're correct.
Is that how you properly say it? Ramadan?
Ramadan, I'd say.
Okay, Ramadan.
Yeah,
okay,
so
so
close enough.
can you tell us a little bit about what that is and what the functions of that are?
Perfect. Yeah, I appreciate you asking. So, Ramadan, it happens approximately every 354 days, and that's pretty much almost once a year. And with that being said, the purpose of Muslims fasting is to remember God. I know a lot of Muslims will tell you the purpose is to know how it feels to be less fortunate, but that's not the primary reason. The real reason is that when we're fasting, we're mandated to remember God more, and it just naturally happens. For example, I forgot to note that fasting for us, it's basically when nearly sunrise from that time until sunset, which is approximately, I'd say, 16 hours or so in the state of Delaware. Pretty much from that time frame, you can't drink, you can't eat, and you can't do other specific things as well. So if you're married, you can't engage with your spouse, basically. And there's a lot of things that are prohibited from the time being. So it gives us more time to reflect on ourselves, on religion, and our relationship with God first and foremost. And we do that specifically for 30 days, 29 to 30 days straight. And it's based on the lunar calendar.
29 days straight. So when did you start that? Like, when was day one this year?
To answer your question, I strongly believe it was on a Thursday. So I was in Mexico at the time, so it was the 23rd, I believe, of March.
Okay, so it just started.
Correct, yeah.
It just started. Okay, and then you end up like essentially like close to a month from now.
Wait, you said
it's 30 days, right?
Oh, then you're correct. Yes.
Okay. That's interesting. What are the challenges with that for you?
I'd say the main challenge is just doing it in a country where Muslims aren't that populated. Like, yes, we have a high Muslim population in the USA. By the end of the day, our percentage is not high. So, like, for example, when I used to have basketball practice a few years ago, and when I used to work basically during Ramadan, it would be very hard, and pretty much that was the main obstacles. For now, I've been traveling, so I can't really say I've been going through obstacles, but in the past, that was definitely the obstacles I went through.
Okay, wow, that's interesting. Okay, so as I was speaking to you before the podcast, I want to learn about the religion and everything, and so I have a lot of ignorance going into this. So you know what to say, ignorance is bliss. So I'm here to learn from you. So tell me a little bit about Ramadan, how it relates to Islam, and all that stuff like that. So can you tell me a little bit about Islam and how that works and that type of religion? What's the belief system and all that kind of stuff?
Absolutely. So you're talking about Ramadan and how it connects with Islam.
Yeah, so tell us about Ramadan, how it connects to Islam, a little about Islam, what their core belief system is, and what it does for you, kind of thing.
Sweet. Okay. Well, it will be easy for me to start with Islam first and foremost. So with that being said, I'd say the 5 pillars of Islam are Shahada, which I will define each. Shahada, Zakat, Salat, Hajj, and then Sayim. So now I'll translate those. So Sayim is fasting, right? Ironically enough, we're in Ramadan. And then Salat is the prayer, the 5 prayers that I do every day. And then Hajj is it's mandatory, obligatory, if you're financially capable of doing it, which is a specific pilgrimage to the Kaaba in Saudi Arabia.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the other one is Shahada, which is a declaration of faith. And then I'm going to retrace my steps. So Shahada, Zakat, Salat, Hajj, and fasting. I feel like I might have defined all 5. I could be wrong. But yeah, basically, if I forget, I'll figure it out. But
For sure.
Thankfully, I remember it all. And with that being said, we mentioned the fasting pillar, right? So that's although we can do it, I mean, we're encouraged to do it outside of Ramadan too, the holy month. You understand?
Yeah.
So although we're encouraged to do it outside of Ramadan as well, basically that pillar relates a lot to Ramadan because it's mandatory to do it in Ramadan if you're eligible. And then, so we have that. What else? And then Ramadan, it's very important to Muslims because of the fact that it's a very important time for us to reflect and get closer to God. And I know Allah, like the same thing as God. It's just different language, honestly. And then another thing is that I noticed, wow. Yeah. I'm pausing. I'll admit that.
That's all right.
Thank you. Yeah. I think that's all I have for now, but like I don't mind sharing more later.
Yeah. So the basic belief system of Islam is based on those 5 pillars, right?
You're correct.
Okay, based on those 5 pillars. And have you always practiced Islam?
No. So I've always been a Muslim my whole life, but I have not consistently practiced it as I should have. And my family, the way we practice our religion wasn't the most strict, at least growing up. But thankfully, it's actually, fun fact. So I'm the youngest of 4 children and a family of 6. So with that being said, my parents plus the 4 of us. Thus, I am actually the first one who started praying 5 times a day in my family.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, and it all started when I almost left Islam, actually. So, yeah, I almost just became like agnostic, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah, and then long story short, my cousin was living with us at the time, and she told me more about Islam. And then I started actually doing some research, and I was like, I just really love this religion. It feels right for me. And then next thing you know, I was like, wow, it's super similar to Christianity and Judaism. And yeah, I realized, it's meant for me. So I really like it. And then next thing you know, and this is back in 8th grade, by the way. I was very young.
Right.
Yeah, so I just started praying by myself and my family. And then July 16th of, I think, 2020, or a year similar, my dad started praying.
Okay.
Yeah, that's an unforgettable day for me. Also, July 16th is 4 days before Colombian Independence Day, I believe. Is that true? July 20th is, in my opinion, Colombian Independence Day. I hope I'm right.
Is that what it... Do they... But they don't celebrate anymore in the U.S., do they? Don't they?
Oh, wait.
Columbus Day. Columbus Day is not celebrated.
I was not referring to Columbus
I'm sorry.
Day. Come on. Eres de Ecuador, way. Come on.
Okay, so I heard Columbus and my mind went the other way. I'm sorry.
Fair enough. Okay. All right. But no, I was referring to the actual country, Colombia.
Okay.
Yeah. I did not.
He said Colombia. Okay,
No
I heard-
manches.
I heard Columbus. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Okay.
I'll give you slack on that one.
It won't happen again. I'm sorry. So you said that it really the religion really resembled with you.
Correct.
What specifically about it?
I'd say the scientific miracles really helped me, but also the pillars and just the similarities between Islam, Judaism, and Christianity. I really liked it, and I really liked the rules too. So, and along with the learning about the scientific miracles from all three religions, I realized I really felt attracted to it. And also, I like how it mandates me to pray 5 times a day, and that gives me so much structure in my life, and I'm just really grateful for that.
Okay, so can you tell us a little bit about the rules, well, to the best of your ability, just so we become more aware of them?
Absolutely. Well, first, before I announce these rules, I just want to say I know that I have met Christians and Jews and Catholics that follow some of these rules I'm going to mention. But for instance, I met conservative Christians and conservative Orthodox Jews who follow these specific rules as Muslims. We are prohibited from sex before marriage.
Okay.
And I remember in the University of Delaware, I got to meet like other abstinent people, not just Muslims, but just other abstinent people. And I was like, okay, you know how it feels being on this big campus, staying abstinent and whatnot. So that's one thing that people act surprised about when I tell them. And I was in Mexico, so I thank God that I had the privilege to go there for 5.5 months. So I noticed that I would even run into nuns. And I'm pretty sure they either stayed abstinent or some of them just don't get married at all. But they're in one of the 2 categories. So it's not just Muslims who follow that specific principle. And other than that, we're not allowed to drink either. And I met Orthodox Jews who don't drink. I met Christians and Catholics who don't drink either. So it's just that I think a lot of Jews and Christians get surprised when they hear that in the USA because they only have been in the USA their whole life, or they're just used to the life of the USA.
Yeah. So even just those 2 things, that's a lot. That's a big commitment. We're talking the no sex before marriage is nothing new, right? That's been around for a long time. But then also the no drinking. But on top of that, you went to UD, which is at one point considered one of the top partying schools in the country. And then after that, even the Women's University. So how do you remain disciplined to, keep all those rules in the back of your head and follow them? How do you do that?
It means a lot to hear that from you, but I'll be honest, it was a hard, torturous journey at one point. So, wow, I'd say communication with God. But other than that, in my 5 prayers per day, I'd say venting out to a lot of people. Well, venting out to at least my close friends. But that's an excellent question because it was UD was that, and that aspect was the hardest point of my life.
So that makes me curious, right? Because you said that you were going out of Islam, and then you spoke to your sister about it.
Close. It was my cousin.
Your cousin about it, and she piqued your interest back in it again, and you became really more interested in it. My question is, so let's say, can anyone just practice a religion and practice Islam? Is that how you say it? Is it practice Islam? It feels a little weird saying it, but is that how you would say it, practice Islam?
Depending on the context, great question. And I'd say, I think what you're trying to ask is, can anybody become a Muslim?
Yeah, essentially.
Right.
Yes, essentially. Even after, like, let's say if you're good. If you need to take calls or anything, just let me know. You're perfect. All right. So I was going to ask you is that, okay, let's say, can someone become a Muslim if they have already, like, let's say, drank alcohol or already had sex before marriage? Is that something one could jump into?
Excellent question. The answer is yes, actually. And being Muslim, it's very important for us to remember that Allah is the most forgiving and He's the most merciful. So God is the most forgiving and most merciful. And that's very important to us. And there's also stories about people who have sinned and made great amounts of sins, but then turned back and repented to God. So, yeah.
Okay.
So that's an excellent question.
That's okay. That's very interesting because I'm definitely interested in the religion. A lot of the I've been hearing, at least from the entrepreneurial community leaders, I keep hearing a lot about religion. And specifically, I hear a lot about Islam. So I'm just curious to know more about it and just learn even more. In association to that, I hear a lot about is it Quran?
The Quran, you're correct.
Quran, yeah. So can you tell us a little bit about what that is and just unpack that for us?
Cool, yeah. That sounds good. So the Quran as well as the Hadith. So the Quran is the main book that we use. And we also have the Hadith, which is another small book. Another book is what I meant to say. And it compiles of pretty much, what is the word I'm looking for? Quotes from the Prophet, peace be upon him. Prophet Muhammad, and that's what the Hadith is from, and it has, and it also has quotes from his companions, peace be upon them, and what they have heard from him and stuff. So that's what the Hadith is for, and then the Quran, it's specifically with scriptures, and it's less so with these quotes. It's just more so with the scriptures, similar to the Torah, similar to the Bible.
Okay, that's interesting. Is that something you read yourself, or?
Correct, I do read that, and I do read specific verses from the Quran in my daily prayers.
Okay, now, like as I said, I'm completely familiar to a lot of these things. So, is there any specific verses or anything like that stand out to you in a very personal way that you can share with us? Maybe that some people might be inspired by or interested in.
Yes. I'd say this one, which is actually in my Instagram bio. Alrighty. So, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. In the name of God, the most merciful, most kind. Innama al-usri yusran. So that one, it says, I strongly believe the English translation is, indeed, verily, with hardship, there comes ease. So I'm pretty sure that's the English translation. I can always check to make sure. And that's on the chapter 94 of the 6th verse of that chapter. I can check to make sure, but I strongly believe that's it. And Surah Inshira. And basically, yeah. So I'll repeat the English translation, which says, in paraphrasing, it says, after every hardship, there's always ease. So no matter what, like, you'll fight a battle and obstacles are hard, but God will take care of it and you'll have ease afterwards.
So why is that, personally to you, why is that a strong resemblance? Why is that, out of all the other ones, why is that one connection to you?
That means a lot because I know how it feels in life to just feel isolated in certain obstacles in life. Also, I'm clearly a black Muslim too, living in the U.S., so it's not the easiest, but nonetheless, just, you know, when us human beings, we feel alone, that's why I can relate to that. And then when you finally see the positive help from God, or just a positive help in general, after like so much difficulty, it just feels really rewarding.
How important is it for someone to have God in their life?
I think it should be the number one thing for people. I do respect people's decisions and their beliefs, so my philosophy is, well, my view is that with your life, you know, I respect whatever people do. You know, that's their life, and yes, but for my personal life, I always make sure it's the number one priority, especially after all God has done for me.
Okay. And how long have you been practicing it now?
I've been taking Islam serious since, 8th or 7th grade, so I'm 26 now. So to answer your question, wow. 13 years, I believe. Yeah, half of my life. 12 to 13 years.
And how beneficial has it been for you?
Super beneficial. It, honestly,
In what aspect?
all aspects, but in what top aspect, I'd say spiritually and discipline.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and it sounds like that. It sounds like that because you mentioned spiritually because, you know, you always have to practice like prayers and all that stuff like that, but also the consistent routine of having to pray 5 times a day and stuff like that, and practicing probably the most toughest discipline is, you know, abstaining yourself from sex or alcohol, which is some of the biggest things in today's world, especially of how much it's glamorized and all that stuff like that. So, I mean, that's amazing. I can see why a lot of people are transitioning to it, because it's just I've seen people out of it, and I've seen people that go into it, and what comes out on the other side, it's almost beautiful to see. So definitely interested in even talking about it a little bit more outside of the podcast. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. It's very educational. We've never had such topic in the podcast before, but I'm very glad we had it. I mean, going into it, I had no idea what to talk about with it, but I'm glad we're going into it. But is there anything in regards to the religion, before we move on to the next topic, anything in regards to religion that I may have not known to ask you, or anything in regards to that maybe you'd want to tell us?
On the top of my head, unfortunately, I have nothing. But yeah, if I have something that I remember, I'd be happy to share it. And thanks for your questions, first and foremost.
Yeah. Thank you for answering them. I'm learning a lot. I'm definitely going to look back at this episode and really think about it more, because there's nothing more than I love about, morals, principles, discipline, and living a spiritually filling life. Because that's what a lot of my friends actually tell me, something I need to work on, my spirituality. Wow. So that's why I'm asking you a lot of these questions, because when they told me that, I'm like, what does that mean? Like when people tell me, it's like, hey man, you're getting fat, you need to work out. Okay, then I'll go to the gym. It's like, hey man, you need to read. You're being a little bit illiterate right now. I was
no
like, okay,
manches
then.
way.
But then when someone tells me, it's like, hey, you need to practice your spirituality. Where do I go for that?
In serio.
Yeah, so it's like I'm super happy we're having that conversation. Selfishly, it's very important to me to learn more about. So
it means a lot to hear that. La verdad. Salud, hermano. Seriously.
So switching into different gears here, we've briefly touched on how you just lived in Mexico for 5 months, right? But let's take that back a little bit. What even got you traveling how you do now?
Whoa.
And just so everybody knows that's first time meeting my buddy Issa here, I always see him in a different area of the world. I have no idea how he does it. So this is why we were going to uncover that a little bit. So can you take us from the top on how that all started? What got you into that?
Perfect. We're on the same page, and thank you. With that being said, all right. Well, I gotta admit though, one significant thing. All right, so one thing we both have in common, although we worked hard all our lives, and our families did, we do have some sort of privilege, like in some senses. So, like we had the privilege of certain aspects. We're capable of traveling the way we like to. And I come from an immigrant household. My family comes from Eritrea. I love my country, proud African. It's a very small African country next to Ethiopia, Sudan, and Djibouti. So near Somalia, not far from Egypt either. And the north side is Egypt. Nonetheless, being Eritrean American, we have family in literally every continent. And I have family members in South America, from Ecuador. But
okay,
yeah, right. Yeah. So basically, it was pretty much mandatory to travel to see family, and it's bittersweet because we wish we could live near them. That's how I got started, just getting used to traveling. And then now, how did I start solo traveling? I really started that throughout my basketball journey. There's a lot of trauma to it because I had some unfair situations, and then I had some situations where I just wasn't aware in basketball. I started from being a pretty good prospect in basketball, and then after that, it just went downhill from there. And then now I'm coming back up, so I'm not really worried. That's how it happened. And then I really told myself I have to. In 2020, I told myself I have to go to Europe. Maybe even earlier, I told myself that. And I said I have to just go and do my best to try to play basketball there. Long story short, that influenced my first sincere solo travel trip. So I literally, with a small amount of money in my savings account for traveling, I'd say less than $1,000, I went, packed my bags, booked a flight to Europe, And then, all right, I didn't pay for that flight, but I paid for the next flights. But
I was gonna say, how did you get a flight to Europe? Like what?
let's be honest, yes.
I was like, that's what it costs to fly over there. Maybe one way sometimes too.
No, you're seriously, you're absolutely correct, honestly. So, yeah, that would be unrealistic. Yeah. So pretty much, yeah, I told myself I made sure I went to Europe. I spent 2 months there, and like I said, being from an Eritrean family, a lot of Eritreans are in Europe. So I had family in many parts of Europe. So I went to Spain for a week, but I went to Barcelona, and then before that, I went to Germany and the Netherlands, and I had family in those two countries as well as Spain. So what I did was basically I stayed in hostels, and sometimes I stayed with family in Germany. Thank you. So basically, I did that between my family and hostels. And then when I went to the Netherlands, I spent 3 weeks with my aunt in the Netherlands. And then what I realized was I was spending so much time in Netherlands and Germany that I networked with basketball teams and just basketball professional players, semi-pro players, from playing on the courts, you name it, to other things. And at the end of that trip, I came back home after 2 months, but I pretty much, when I came back, I had the opportunity I could have played semi-pro for a team in Germany and a team in Netherlands. And the main thing that stopped me was financial reasons. But at the end of the day, I have no regrets. I networked pretty well. I proved myself on the court. People knew I was at the level to play semi-pro and then pro. And especially if I had double citizenship, because that's another hack. But they knew that if I had double citizenship, I would have played pro on the spot. But nonetheless, I'm just grateful. Like, I'm literally 5'9" and 3/4. So I'm not a big guy. I'm not the most athletic, but I have some functions. Like, I can shoot, I play smart, and I'm eligible for a second citizenship. So that's why I was able to get to where I got to. So with that being said, that specific reason is why I started my solo travel to Europe. And then I did that off my savings, but I also lived below my means, and I also used my credit card. And I used 2 credit cards, and then I paid all of that debt, like about a year later with no interest. That's what got me started in solo travel. And then long story short, now it gets to a briefer part of the story. So when I went to Barcelona in that 2-month trip, I made a great friend from Chile, and I was in Barcelona for a week in a hostel called Kabul Party Hostel, which is a highly ranked hostel in the world. But basically, I went to that hostel, and then me and my Chilean friend, we just had a great time. My Spanish was very minimal. En serio, fue muy poquito, en serio. Pero ahorita, muy diferente. Gracias a Dios. So basically, like, my Spanish was literally very low, and he didn't speak English, but we just vibed, you know what I mean? And then this was in October 2021. And then we eventually started listening to reggaeton a lot, and I really liked the music. I loved that. Then I went back home, started listening to that, and then I started falling in love with dembow. Shout out to Dominican Republic, RD, República Dominicano. So they got that really good dembow music. I fell in love with that. Yes, and that's how I got started on solo traveling to Latin America. But the question is, why didn't I travel the Caribbean part of Latin America? Well, truth is, they don't have that many hostels, man.
Really?
In serio way, like, I know you're not used to being called away, but
I worked in hospitality for a while, and all the kitchen cooks were Mexicans. So at some point, I was speaking their language at some point. So I'm all cool with it, man. It's all family.
I love it, man.
So they don't have that many hostels over there.
Correct. They have a low amount of hostels in Puerto Rico. República Dominicana and Cuba, it's literally less.
So you went from Europe to pursuing basketball, even for basketball further, but then you made the trip to more Latin America.
Correct.
So, but was that still for basketball, or was that just for the sake of traveling and experiencing different things?
Excellent question. The number one reason was really for traveling, experiencing different things, and just being, shout out to indigenous land, that's all of the Americas in reality. But, yeah, so Yeah, so I figured, some points in my life I went to school with a lot of people from indigenous countries, indigenous mestizo countries, but like, yeah, so I was like, the least I can do is at least immerse myself in it, and I just fell in love with it, honestly. But I'm well aware of like one thing that does make me happy though. There is tourism, which is fine, but then there's excessiveness where people like in Puerto Rico and in Mexico and more places, people do overextend their privilege to the point where I don't know how to explain, but like
It's like almost like a sense of entitlement from the tourist.
there you go.
Yeah.
And they like, for example, por ejemplo in Cancun, like what happens in Cancun, like for the locals, it's 10 times harder. Like I don't know how to explain it, but you know what I'm trying to say, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I also try to be wary of that too. I try to avoid being part of that problem as much as I can, and I try to do my best to combat it as much as I can. But yeah,
I've been seeing a lot of that, or at least headlines about it in Bali, where a lot of tourism is going to Bali, and a lot of they're doing exactly what they're doing. They're extending their privileges. It's almost as if like it's their home, right? Like, hey, like I'm here because I can be here, but I'm going to take control because it's like my ship kind of thing. Yeah. Which I can only imagine how disrespectful it is to the natives there.
100.
So okay, that's interesting. So you've done a lot more traveling than I apparently know. Like Europe all the way to Latin America. That's awesome, man. I hope I can do that as well one day. Definitely. But when you go to these places, what are the things that, like, if you were to have a checklist, to check off before you decide I'm going there, what is that?
Great question. I would say that my main things of going there are to go to the non-touristic spots, and thankfully I succeeded in that. Go to the capitals or big cities where I can meet locals, and to always check out my special interests. For example, I know it sounds generic what I'm saying, but here I'll give examples. So most travelers, when they go to Latin America, they do it their own way, which I respect. But a lot of them prioritize, I think they put nature number one and beach towns and touristic towns number one. I'm not bashing them, that's their style of doing it. But I'm the type of person where if I have like only 3 days in a specific city, if I have 3 days in a specific city, I'll make sure to, if there's a Mexican rap concert in this specific city, or a basketball tournament, or a USA football tournament, I'm going to be there to watch it. If I miss out on the pyramids, which is unfortunate, then so be it. But thankfully I have seen the pyramids. But nonetheless, I'd rather put nature on a hold. I'd rather be able to meet locals. For example, I went to Honduras, and people in the USA, the look on their faces when they hear that. But I didn't go to Roatan Islands, which is awesome, an awesome place, but I literally went to San Pedro Sula, and apparently it was the world's most dangerous city in 2017.
Really?
The murder capital, apparently. But all I know is that my purpose in going there was I knew San Pedro Sula had small tourism from international people. So I knew that I could be safe there, and my friend was a local there. So I literally went there for 5 days, and I had a great time. I met a lot of local people. Tourists are great, but it's always good when you can just be that only tourist. So
I hear that. Okay. So by minimizing the tourism aspect of it, you're able to experience the nativeness of it, is what you're saying.
Perfectly said. That's exactly what it is.
That's awesome. Okay,
yeah.
So interesting. So out of all the, I'm sorry, were you gonna say something?
My apologies. Yes.
Go ahead, please.
I eventually want to mention one part of Mexico that I went to, actually.
Okay. I was gonna ask you, and it might lead into it. Of all the places you have been, what has been your favorite one thus far?
Oh. Wow. Right as I wrote it down. Number one, I don't know, but I say one of them. It's hard, man. En serio, la verdad. Seriously, it is so hard.
And why?
Because there's so many great experiences, so it's hard to compare. I'd say I have to share two if that's fine with you.
Oh, yeah, please.
Thank you, my brother. All right, 3, but don't worry. 2 of them will be quick.
All right, well, 4, I might have to charge you for that.
Hey, no problem with that. No hay pedo, eh? So I'd say one of the top 3 is definitely when I was in Mexico City coming back from Honduras, and then I had a flight like 2 days after, And I told myself, okay, I just missed out an hour ago on a show of one of my favorite Mexican rappers, Young Lucas. Shout out to him. But anyways, yeah, Jalisco represent. That's where he comes from. But pretty much, I was like, dude, I missed out. And then I looked on the pictures he's tagged on and the posts he's tagged on, and I was like, wait, he's performing in this nearby state tomorrow night. All right, there's no guarantee I can make it, but I'm gonna do it. So it's like 2 to 3 hours away. So I caught the bus in traffic. 3.5 hours. I arrived the next night, and thankfully it was about $4 to $5 US dollars to attend that concert. He had a small concert, so I took that risk. Next thing you know, I made it to his concert, and basically it's Mexican rap, reggaeton. Pardon me.
Yeah, that's good.
Thank you. Perfect. So basically, I made it to his concert, and eventually, I was the only tourist. I was the only non-Mexican in that small concert. It happened to be in an antro, in a discoteca. In a bar, in a club where they party. So, yeah, I ended up going there, and as I was in the bathroom, I was by myself, but there's a lot of people. The 2 Mexican Americans, they're like, "Hey, you speak English or Spanish?" I was like, "I speak both," and then we just had a great conversation. And I was like, and they're like, "You came by yourself?" And I was like, "Yeah, man, I sacrificed a lot to see this rapper, so I got nothing to lose." And then they invited me to sit with them, and they ended up they're like, "Yeah, we have the front seats." You know what I mean? Yeah, so I got lucky. My sacrifice paid off, and then I met some great friends who I still contact to this day. And then I have videos of me standing next to the rapper, Young Lucas.
Oh, man.
Yes.
That is awesome.
Honestly, man. And it's like, so I usually don't talk about the prices of things in different countries because I don't want people to try to take advantage. But I'll tell you this. Because this rapper is very, very, he's very local. He's just now rising. He didn't charge that much. So they charge $4 to $5 US dollars. And I'm telling you right now, he's going up. So I caught him at the right time. It has nothing to do with the price of stuff in Mexico. I caught him in the right time. So I took that risk for $5, and then I paid some more expensive for hotel and stuff, the bus ride, but it was so worth it. I met some new friends and experiences. So that was one of my top 3 experiences. But I want to apologize. So I know I said,
all right. No. You were talking about the rap. You took the risk to go see the artist, and it paid off clearly. We were talking about what your favorite spot, for both the places you've been. So please, no, by all means, do you.
Wow, I feel better. It means a lot to hear that. So thank you. Wow. And then the 2 other things. One thing I'll make quick is, so I mentioned one of the things. Now the 2 other things, one of the 2 is, well, first, that concert, by the way, was in Cuernavaca, Morelos. So, yeah, Estado Morelos. Yeah, so basically, Morelos is a state south of Mexico City, which is a state in itself. That being said, in my early time of my 5.5-month journey to Mexico and just living there, one of my great friends, he's from Morelos, ironically enough, and he's a basketball player. He was ranked 3rd in FIBA for 3v3 in the country, and basically, yeah, we became good friends. I went to his tournament, basically his FIBA. FIBA is similar to FIFA, it's just basketball instead of football. So yeah, for those that don't know, so no problem.
That's funny.
Yeah, so pretty much he was in that basketball 3v3 tournament, and they did pretty well. He ended up qualifying himself for playing Rumba a Miami, so literally the basketball tournament in Miami, which was the one after this one. So basically, he was in the qualifier tournament, and I watched it. I recorded him. We had a good time. We sat next to each other. I watched him win. So it was really nice. My friend from Morelos, he moved to Mexico City, and pretty much after college basketball, he's doing 3v3, and now he's really excelling. And he also broke a lot of odds. So, politics didn't work in his favor, even though he knew he was good. But now he's getting the exposure he deserves. So shout out to Julio Ruiz, mi hermano, en serio, wey. Just keep on hustling, brother. But yeah, man. Who knows? We might be teammates sometime. But nonetheless, yeah, man. Seriously.
So what it's sounding like is that you don't have favorite places because of the location. You have favorite places because of what you experience in them.
That's perfectly said. That's exactly what it is.
Okay. So
Yeah.
So I guess a better question to ask is, if you had to rank like top 2, top 3 out of all the places you've been, where have you gone that has given you the best experience or the best memory?
Wow. Possibly the small town.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm glad like those 2 parts I mentioned, that was all the important facts of it. The small town, and shout out to Guerrero. That's another state of Mexico I got a lot of respect for. It's called Cuajini-Cuilapa. What a name. Yes. What a I don't know what indigenous language, but it's a real long name, but I respect it. So Cuajini-Cuilapa, it's in a part of Guerrero, which is next to Oaxaca State. And basically, it's in a region called Costa Chica. And shout out to Afro-Mexicans who don't really get the recognition. But basically, that town has the most Afro-Mexicans in the whole country. And, like, I noticed a lot of Afro-Mexicans are just, they don't really get recognized. And, like, most Mexicans either don't know they exist or they just think that they're Cuban immigrants or Colombian immigrants. So, yeah. So they'll assume they're Afro-Latinos, but they won't realize they lived in Mexico for like 500 years. But nonetheless, it really felt nice, you know, like, I'll admit, being the only black guy in many parts of Mexico was not bad. Like, people showed me a lot of support, love, and respect. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not complaining, but it felt good to actually, like, walk in and be like, wow, without opening my mouth with my accent, I can blend in with these people. And, like, people would think, oh, yeah, he's from Cuaji. He's from Cuajini-Cuilapa, man. He's from Guerrero. Like, you know what I mean? So, wait, Guerrero. So it's hard to roll the tongue, but yeah. Oh, my gosh. But that was the most memorable time. I only spent 2 nights there, but I wish I spent more. But I'm just grateful to God that I had that opportunity. As many Muslims would say, Alhamdulillah, all praise is due to God.
There you go. That's awesome, man. So you've clearly been to a lot of places.
Thank to God, yes.
A lot of places and experienced different cultures, different people, different environments, the whole nine. So with that, you meet a lot of people. I imagine a lot of ladies.
Correct.
So why don't we go into that a little bit about the whole dating life for Issa here, especially with all of the traveling and with how disciplined you are with your religion.
Thank you.
How does that work for you?
Well, I'm grateful to say that. So Muslims, Jews, and Christians are allowed to date. It just depends how you do it. So thankfully, you know, I met a lot of people, and obviously, you know, when you meet a lot of people, that includes a lot of women. So with that, that does sound funny. I'm not gonna lie. No mames, yeah, I just can't believe it. Yeah, but with that, all right. I know I sounded nonchalant, but with that being said, yeah, like, you meet a lot of women, and I'd say it reminds me of college in a way. So being in the University of Delaware, you meet a lot of people. You obviously meet a lot of women. And then afterwards, you go in a pandemic and you're in Wilmington University. You meet less people, meet less women. But then when you're traveling, you're usually in a city, at least in my experience. So you meet a lot of people, obviously a lot of women. Now, what's the difference? So I'd say in the U.S., you know, I have a good experience dating, right? But abroad, just in any other country or region of the world, I have better experience. And I think it's because it's hard to explain, but nowadays, especially in 2023, gender roles, I don't know how to explain it, to word it, but you get what I'm trying to say. So people basically, you know, when we look for women, we prefer women that are more so feminine. Mm-hmm. And, you know, and I'll admit, I'll give shout out to Mexico. Like, the men are very masculine there. You know what I mean? Like, for example, por ejemplo, like, you'll literally see men fixing their own cars. But in the USA, that's a surprise. You know what I mean? So it's just a little thing. So with that being said, I like how people are more cooperative, both men and women. So, and that's why you see long-lasting relationships in Mexico, in my experience. So, and even when I was dating, like, I seen people who are like, wow, I actually have hope of, like, a sincere, permissible, religiously permissible relationship with them. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I'd say my dating experience is much better there than here, even though I have good experiences in the USA.
Okay, so and it's specifically because is one way to say it that that the women are not trying to be men and the men are not trying to be women, kind of stuff like that.
There you go. That's exactly what it is. And
Okay.
Yeah, and like for those who are listening, like if you think I'm like taking it the wrong way, not really. Like I'm not telling a woman like don't become like an entrepreneur. No, I actually think that's pretty cool. You know what I mean? You know, there's nothing wrong with all that. But when it comes to relationships, we're just talking about specific masculine and feminine roles. That's all we're saying. So, you know, we're being objective out here. But yeah.
So in that case, so did you do like your dating experience outside of the U.S.? I mean, is there any? Are you talking to anyone? Is there a special lady out there for you, or you were looking?
We're pretty much we're looking, but like there's a few that I'm like, wow, I like how their values align up with their life, and yeah, honestly, there's hope. So yeah, and like there's actually like it's not no sarcastic. Like yeah, there's hope, but like there's actually some good hope. So you know, I can do a sincere, religiously permissible relationship.
So not perfect, but the type of lady for Issa. What are her top 3 qualities that she would ideally have?
Piety is one, so taking religion very seriously. And okay, a couple of years ago, I could have answered this on point, but I will need some time. So after piety, wisdom. The third one, it'll take me a while, but I'd say the third one is probably humility. So I wouldn't say the word humble, but being down to earth. So I'm a very simple type of guy, and I'd rather live below my means, but like I will still spoil my like future wife, like, you know, when the time is right, and like just a normal amount of times. You know what I mean? So, but at the same time, I like more so not spoiling, but I like more so treating just people in like very unprivileged situations. You know, my family comes from Eritrea, so they know about oppression for sure. War-torn country, very small country, unrecognized in the world, and yeah. So the least I can do is just give back to not just my people back there, but just all oppressed people in the world and locally and globally. So,
do you think that those qualities are harder to find in women today in this country?
Absolutely.
And aside from the gender role detail, well, why do you think?
Yes, indeed. Although those qualities are harder for a woman to find than men too nowadays. But why? You said why?
Yeah, like what else aside from the gender role?
I think it's because of social media, man.
Really?
The way you know what I mean?
Tell me what you mean.
It's hard to explain. And like, I seen some podcasts say some things that I just want to say, but yeah, I wish I can.
Can you name the podcast?
How about this? I don't remember the podcast, but like, well, actually, this podcast might have mentioned specific topics relating to that.
Okay.
Shout out to Mylan Reed. Got mad love for him, but like on that podcast when y'all were talking, maybe y'all talked about it. I don't know.
Yes.
Okay, so that, but like, there's this one podcast. Somebody said something, and I'm gonna plead the fifth on this, but oh, okay. Somebody said hoflation.
Hoflation. Can you unpack what that is? What that means to us? Because I've heard of inflation. I don't know if that translates, directly to, hoflation.
I understand. So I'm just gonna say, people were basically saying somebody like their grandpa would go for a lady, right? Mm-hmm. And they'd be like normal standards, right? No problem. But now, like, if somebody try to holler at somebody, shoot their shot, spit their game, or try to talk to a lady, and he said now it's 10 times harder for a lower quality lady, basically. And I'm like, although I'm lucky in my situation not to worry about that as much, most men do got to worry about that.
Yeah. And social media definitely does not make that easier because it makes the gap even further out. Yeah, because that's like almost like not the first thing, but that's something undeniably. That's kind of the world we're in now. Social media is existing, and it's part of a lot of people's lives. And one of the things they look at is the lifestyle on your feed. And some have it, some don't, and while it might be an unspoken thing, I'm sure it's definitely something that's considered in the back of a lot of their heads. But who am I?
Who am I? I feel you.
So I mean that's interesting because I do agree with a lot of that, and I definitely think it's harder to date in today's world than it might have been before. I was watching this show called Love Is Blind. Have you ever heard of it? On Netflix. On Netflix, Love Is Blind.
I'm not sure if I'm aware of it.
So the premises of the show is people are put in pods. Two people are put in pods, and then they never see what they look like, right? At least for a good amount of the show, they don't see each other at all. So they don't know exactly what they look like, their skin color, their size, or anything like that. Then the premises is that love is blind, so they essentially get to know each other just on an intellect level. And then they have to decide whether or not that's someone they want to engage to. They like get engaged with.
Wow.
And then that's once the person proposes and they meet and the person says yes or no, that's when they finally see each other, right? So what I've noticed about, and the reason why I'm bringing up that show, and to your point, is that I forget what season they're on. I'm going to call it season 4 or 5. The men are so different from what I saw season 1 to now. And I don't know what the time frame of that has been. Maybe a year, like 2 years. But like the men before were like a lot more firm, a lot more like, not call it macho man or anything like that, but they were a lot more firm, a lot like had like a stronger, like what's the word for it, energy to them. But now on the newest season that I'm currently watching, it's they're breaking down half of the time. They're breaking down half of the time, and the ladies are the ones being the rough ones.
Oh my gosh!
Like in one episode, I specifically remember this lady and this gentleman had agreed to get married or be engaged or whatever the case is, and she had literally told him, he was like, oh, we're being emotional. She said, no, you're being emotional, and it's crazy because I'm like, to see that dynamic of how we go from just in a few seasons to have firm to now soft, and now the roles being reversed. It's so weird. And I think it makes it a lot harder to date because I think a lot of the things women used to complain about, is that they want a more emotionally open man. But then there's a fine line to that because if you're too emotional, it's an issue, right?
Yeah.
So it's like we're constantly, either balancing the scale or tipping it. And I think it's tough for a man in today's world because of that. Would you agree? Or do you have any take on that?
No, you're absolutely correct. Absolutely. And it's funny how I know men don't know what they want, but women don't know what they want either.
Well, there's a lot of unrealistic expectations today.
Yes.
A lot. And social media is at the forefront to blame for that. But yeah, unfortunately, we're just a small piece on a big board. So we just got to learn to play the game.
Yeah. Honestly, man.
So, man, wow. So from Delaware, sports to then traveling, visiting all the countries you have, to dating. We spoke about your religion, which again, thank you so much for. So much. So much.
Thank you.
Is there anything else you wanted to touch on? Is there anything else you might want to go into, or did we cover a good amount of ground?
We covered a nice amount of ground, but I'll admit I got some curiosity myself. So
okay,
let's see. Thankfully, we did talk about some stuff about your upbringing, like beforehand. But I just want to give you credit, the way you could choose any accent you want, basically. For example, por ejemplo, but when we first met, I was like, okay, he's possibly from, his roots are possibly from South America or Central America, right? But I was like, yeah, I'm guessing he was just born out, Delaware or nearby.
Yeah.
Next thing you know, I found on your podcast, straight up ESL, my English was not good when I went in the U.S. Man,
I was not existent.
That's that caught me off guard. But right. I forgot I met many people like that. But so basically, yeah, man, you stepped it up. Would you like to talk about that?
Yeah. So in particular, to like going from Spanish to English and becoming like kind of bilingual essentially. Yeah. So as we were talking, I came to the country. I lived in Delaware for a year, then lived in New York for about 4, then came back to Delaware, and I didn't know a pinch of English at all, And then when I went to school in New York, I was in a program called an ESL program, which is English as Second Language. And then from there, what essentially is like school, but in Spanglish is what it essentially is. You're speaking in Spanish and English at the same time. And in hopes, well, the whole goal of the program is that you essentially fully transition to English, right? And then I did that from 2nd grade all the way to 6th grade. So by the time I got to 6th grade, I finished, I got out of the program. I don't know what the requirement of getting out of the program is. I just remember one day being in it and then the next not. So I mean, and it was great. I also watching a lot of American TV. That helped out a lot. Engaging with people a lot. It's just I feel like it's so much easier to learn a different language when you're in that country that speaks it primarily. Especially also being young, you're able to absorb a lot of the information a lot better. So yeah, it felt almost like night and day learning the language. But from New York, and then I also say a big contributor to it was working at a country club, because not average or less or more, but there's a very particular kind of lifestyle with people that go to country clubs, and they have different what's the word for it? A different kind of mix with words. They have very complicated terminology, but it's normal to them. And in that, you hear the tonality, how words are used. You kind of pick it up. So I worked at a country club for like 6 years, and I picked it up over time, and it just helped me a lot. And on the other side of it is that once not too long ago, I bumped into a friend from when I was very young, when first coming into the country, and the first thing he said to me was, in just talking, the first thing he said to me was like, "What happened to your accent?" And I was like, "Wait, what? I had an accent?" So that's when I learned I had an accent, and then I didn't anymore. So, that's the story of going from Spanish to English, and now I primarily speak Spanish at home. So it helps, keep that foundation there, as well as with my mom. So and my entire family, for that matter. So I get to practice it, frequently. So yeah,
wow, that's super duper cool. And like, after coming back from 5.5 months in Mexico, I'm just like, it's all English here. What? It's all English here. I what's wrong with me? Like, and I'm just like, I gotta find a solution. Like, I want to continue my Spanish, pero estamos aquí, güey. Entonces, no hay problema, podemos, continue, continuar, we can still like continue with that, but
haremos un podcast en español.
Monday?
Haremos un podcast en español. We'll do a Spanish podcast.
Oh, hey, shoot.
Actually, one of my buddies, Herman, he says that he wants to start like a Spanish podcast. So I was like, hey, I'll probably connect you with him.
Hey, it could work, man. I'm telling you.
But,
nah, man.
Issa, anything else from you? Any other questions or anything you want to talk about by any chance?
Honestly, I'd say yes, but I don't. On the top of my head, I don't know what to think about. But you know what? Actually, I currently don't have anything that I can think of. But yeah, but.
We can definitely, and this is not going to be the only time here. You're going to explore. You're going to tour more. You're going to travel more, and I want to keep hearing about these stories. So this is only one of however many episodes you're going to have.
Appreciate that, man.
Hey, man, you're always welcome back here. Mi casa, su casa, as I'm sure you know of. So yeah, thank you so much. Where can people find you so they can see all your fun traveling? Where can people find you?
Thank you. So. Also, I just want to say, same positive wishes to you. Thank you super duper much for having me. Always a pleasure. And mi casa es tu casa, en serio, güey. También, and with that being said, feel free. Y'all more than welcome to follow me at Cuauhtemoc 716. So, Cuauhtemoc is not easy to spell. So, CUAUHTEMOC 716. So basically, that's my Instagram handle, and I think my TikTok is Viajero302. So VIAJERO JERO302. And if it's not that one, it's another one, but TikTok is not that important to me.
Well, we might not even have it for some time from now.
Oh, see? You learn something new every day. That's very true.
Yeah. I think I saw somewhere that they're saying that potentially if you end up using a VPN, if you end up using a VPN to access TikTok after it's been banned, you could face up to 20 years in jail. I think something what I heard.
Whoa.
Yeah, imagine that.
Oh my gosh.
Sources trust me, bro. I briefly read that somewhere. I didn't read too much into it, but I'm sure there's details in between the lines. Man. So yeah, your TikTok is Viajero, and what number again?
302.
Viajero is just it's Spanish for traveler, right?
Correct.
There you go. Perfect.
Yeah.
All right, so my man, Issa, thank you so much for coming, dude. I mean, what a pleasure to have you. I really enjoyed going to these topics before, especially the religion one. I've never gone into such a topic like that in detail like I have with you. But I am very thankful and glad and appreciative that you were very open to have that conversation with me. So thank you so much, man. I hope you had a good time. I hope have you done a podcast before?
First one ever.
First one ever.
And
So,
best one ever.
There you go. Well, when we don't have nothing else to compare of, I mean, of course, we'll put you up there. But yeah, man, thank you so much. I had a blast. I can't wait to see your future adventures and have you back to tell the world about it, because it's very, very entertaining and fun to hear about. But yeah, thank you. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much, my brother. Such a pleasure being with you. Fue un placer contigo, hermano. And también, yeah, such a pleasure, and like I'm excited for the future, and I'm excited for your future success as well as the success you already had in your life as well. So yeah, I'm excited to keep on winning together.
Bless you, brother. I really appreciate you. All right, well, guys, we have had yet another wonderful episode of the EP Podcast. If you haven't already, please like, comment, subscribe, share with your friends, and turn on that notification bell so you don't miss anything that we share with you. And in case you're not aware now, we do have a website. You can just visit us at eppodcast.us. In there, you can find out more information about the podcast itself, any marketing opportunities. If you're in the area, you could potentially come for a behind-the-scenes recording, and just a lot more opportunities down the road. So if you haven't already, please do. But until then, EP Podcast is out.